Everybody, we're back again. And I know you're excited because I'm excited. X's and Noles presented by Noles 24/7. I'm here with my two best friends in the entire video producing Florida State content world. That is Adam Brown. That is Kevin Little. I am Trey Rowland. And today, guys, spring positional preview / our biggest spring football storylines to watch. And today, it's time to talk about the big uglies. That's right. We're going to be talking about the Florida State new look, revamped, completely, absolutely different as can be offensive line for the year of our Lord 2025. Guys, do you think that maybe Norvell and crew identified a deficiency in the trenches after last year? Do we agree that maybe they saw that they might want to change some stuff? Not all at once. Go ahead. Group
Yeah,
question.
yeah. We don't expect. I guess Leonard is the only guy we expect.
One.
Yeah, we expect one returning starter. Just kind of based off our thoughts together when we put our heads together, and yeah, they went out and got 4 transfers that were starting in other places. So that kind of tells you what they were selling to those guys.
Absolutely. 80% difference in our projected, not official, we're not at practice, we don't know, our projected starting offensive line. So I guess we'll go left to right. So you got Vanderbilt tackle, Gunnar Hansen. You've got UCF projected left guard, Adrian Medley. You've got my absolute favorite pickup of the entire transfer portal. That is Wake Forest center, Luc Petitbon. Right guard, we think right or left, I'm not exactly sure which is going to be.
Right.
We think it's going to be right. Richie Leonard, guy who we got from Florida. Brevard, what up? Coco Tiger, love you guys. And then right tackle. Big old gargantuan fellow, Micah Pettis from Ole Miss. Guys, there is so much new. There is so much unknown. None of these dudes have ever played together at all.
Thank freaking God.
Yeah, right.
Jesus.
It's been a while. It's a mishmash of different schools. It's a mishmash of body types. It's a mishmash of skill sets. Adam, there's a lot of meaty stuff here. What is your biggest storyline that you're watching for this unit? Because, man, is it intriguing.
I think...
Take your time.
Well, I think that the first thing, you've already kind of said it. Can these guys... can they find the chemistry in what it's going to be, 8 months, 6 months, whatever? I guess it'll be 8 months. They would, if you consider they were here in January, can they find the chemistry from January to August that's going to get them out on the football field and have them playing some form of cohesive offensive line?
Adam, and just something to add to that, I want to ask you a question. How hard is that to do? Like, are people just kind of taking that for granted? How hard is it to get 5 dudes that have never played together and just say, all right, go get them, boys? Is it harder or easier than people think?
It's not. No, I don't. I think it's as hard as people think. It's not. It's certainly not easy, but it's not something like Herb Hand's going to do. They're going to work on it. Obviously, they're going to be out there and they're going to be doing drills. But those guys have got to learn to communicate for themselves on the field when bullets are flying. Like, they've all played a shitload of football together. Or not together. They've all played
collectively. Yeah, they're all like redshirt seniors, basically. Yeah.
They've all played a ton of snaps. They've all seen things, but they've never communicated them on the field to each other. So there's nuances to that, and those are the things, like just being together and getting reps together. It's going to come with that. But you would think that there, with the number of snaps that they've all individually gotten, that they should be ahead of the curve because they understand what they're seeing in front of them better than like a young guy. If you were asking a sophomore to step in there who hasn't had a ton of snaps and hadn't seen a lot of stuff, he's going to be swimming. These guys aren't going to be swimming. They're going to be focused on communicating and what they know is happening in front of them. So it should be easy for them. It's is going to take some time though, because again, they've got to learn each other's tendencies. Is this guy short set? Is this guy deep set?
Hmm.
There's different things that different guys do within a system, that they've got to understand about one another, and that's just going to take. Spring's going to be vital for them. It's going to be really good reps for them to get out there together and just figure each other out, learn each other, learn their own tendencies.
Do you think that the scheme that they will be asked to do lends itself well to developing cohesion quicker, or is it going to be one that's going to delay the process a
Yeah,
little
because they
bit?
don't do a lot. And they're going to run inside zone, and then they're going to run inside zone again, and then they might hand jet off. Then they're probably going to run inside zone again, and they're going to emphasize blocking that first level. It is what Herb Hand believes in. They're going to emphasize blocking that front line and making sure they are good at that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the system is good for not being too difficult. You're not asking them to run counter a ton. You're not asking them to run outside zone a ton, where there's a lot, especially with counter, there's a lot of ifs, this, then that. You're not having
Hmm.
to think as much on the fly. With inside zone, I mean, it is get it and hit it. So
Nice.
I think that's a good thing. I think it lends itself well to what they're trying to do. They also went out and got guys that are really good at blocking inside zone. Like they went out and got fits for what they want to do. They didn't try to go out and get a tackle and make him a guard or make a guard a tackle. Like they didn't do things that perhaps
Cross training.
the predecessor did here for so long. So it's good that they went out and got guys that fit their system. They went out and got guys that got experience. Now let's get it all together.
Kev, what I agree, man. It has been a while. Like you look at a dude and it's like, okay, that's a left guard, that's a right tackle. Like
Yeah.
define roles, define body types, and you're right, dude. Not together, but the experience that this unit has, like cumulatively, woof. They've seen a lot of football, and they've seen a lot of football against some really impressive athletes. So they're not going to be overwhelmed by the level of athlete that they're going to meet on Florida State's schedule. Kev, what is your storyline to watch for this just eminently intriguing unit?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys kind of really hit the big question, which is how do they gel as a unit? So they all mostly come from inside zone backgrounds, or at least similar to inside zone. Petitbon at Wake
Oh,
Forest.
nice. That's a good little. That's pretty good. Tu parles français?
Yeah, je parle français. But no, they ran a lot of duo, which is similar to inside zone. But the idea of holding these, if anything, his was probably actually more similar to what her band coaches. But all of these guys, come from inside zone backgrounds. That's what they do. But one thing, one other thing I think is we're talking about is kind of the background of these guys. What did PFF rank them? How does that factor into the conversation? And
Okay.
so here's the PFF grades of the guys. Jalen Early's is kind of covered by our logo, so I'll uncover it here. But
I think that there are some snap numbers.
What stands out to you guys from just looking at that glob of information?
Well, the first thing I want to say is one thing that I think a lot of people don't factor in when they talk about PFF scores that's very important is that PFF is not opponent adjusted. So you'll often see these guys coming from lower levels having much higher PFF grades than guys that are like in the SEC. So I think we would be pretty naive to not believe the SEC is the SEC and the Big Ten just represent a higher level of consistent opponents throughout the course of a season. So someone like Micah Pettis or Hansen are guys that Gunnar Hansen should be guys that we give a little bit more, lenience to these numbers, right? They faced SEC competition. Whereas, Medley, Petitbon, Leonard, these guys, represent the higher scores. You can see their pass blocking grades, but we have to take those into relative context. But one thing that's kind of interesting here is the pass grades on all of the guys that they brought in, except for Pettis, is higher actually than the run blocking grades. And I don't
does that jive with the eye test from the film that we watched? Does that surprise you?
I think they were more consistent in the past game. A lot of these guys were short setters. A lot of these guys were just kind of get in front of the defender, maybe not the most able-footed. And so I think they were able to rack up decent pass grades because they weren't giving up tons of sacks or really quick pressures. Whereas the run game, I think, is a harder grade to give with these guys because a lot of them are stagnators. A lot of them are, like Gunnar Hansen in particular, has a fairly low run game grade, but we watched his run game and we were pretty happy with it because again, when you stagnate someone in the pass game, they count it as a win, but when you stagnate someone in the run game, they don't count that as a win.
Yeah. Right. And he was always in the right position with good technique. He just doesn't have the power. He's not a mover, like a eye-catching mover like a Micah Pettis, but he was positionally in the right spot.
Right. Whereas you can see this, right? With Pettis, he is a people mover, and so he got a much higher run grade PFF-wise, but they're just different blockers. They do different things, and I don't think that the run game for Gunnar Hansen is the run grade for Gunnar Hansen is necessarily indicative of a poor outcome within this system.
Adam, what do you think? Looking at these numbers, do they jive with what we saw? And do you think that there may be either a unperceived strength or an unperceived weakness in this group of transfers that we haven't talked about yet? I've got something that I'm kind of worried about, but I want to hear your thoughts on it.
I think that they are good inside zone blockers. There's data out there that supports that besides just these PFF numbers, that's what those guys did the best. So that's a good thing. We watched all their film. We broke all these dudes down. Even Leonard last year, like coming in, we were excited about all these guys. We took a deep dive and really looked into what's going on. Like Medley, it doesn't shock me that his run grade is a little bit lower. Like Kev was saying, he's not the most fleet of foot guy. There are times where he gets knocked off balance and loses balance, and that's going to ding him because he's going to give up negatives or whatever. Hansen, I mean, we watched him against Texas. He just got overpowered against that dude he was going against. I can't think of his name, but guy against Texas that he was facing up against. I mean, that was a guy that just physically was better than him. And I would guess over the course of the schedule, they played Alabama. I mean, he probably ran into a few times where that was an issue. I think that these guys are all pretty technical. Pettis being the one that is not in the pass game, it doesn't surprise me that they're better in the pass game because I think they're all pretty technical. And as Kev was saying, like they're able to win, they're able to stalemate in the pass game. They don't get beat, and that's important. Pettis, on the other hand, he gets whipped from time to time in the pass game. I mean, he just his feet go dead. His feet go dead, and he just gets blown by. And that's a problem.
There's a larger variation between like how impressive his wins are and just how bad some of the losses are. Like they catch your eye in both ways. The thing that kind of worries me is I worry about the tackles and pass sets a little bit just because it's not going to take, I don't think, obviously, whatever super freaks they play for like Clemson or some of the other better teams you face, like any tackle in college football is going to have a problem with that. I worry about the tackles and pass protection because I feel like Hansen has a clear weakness for dudes that have a lot of power and size, and Pettis, I think speed gives him fits. So you don't necessarily have to have super freaks at defensive end to beat these guys. You could kind of have like how Florida State has their edge room, a guy who's got a really good like skill set of like power, maybe not the fastest dude, match him up on Hansen all day. Like it's just there's a couple obvious ways that you could maybe get taken advantage of the passing game, but then again, how much drop back passing is this offense even going to do?
Well, I think that's important because, I mean, that's something that I kind of put out there as like one of the question marks for this group is like, how are they going to hold up in standard passing downs.
Yeah.
I don't know if this offense believes in the standard passing down. Like I just, yeah, I think if they get in that, they're going to sit in 6-man protections, maybe even 7-man protections, and try to hit a vertical shot to a tall guy. Like, I just don't. I don't see them doing a whole lot of sending 5 guys out in a route combination. It just doesn't seem to be what Gus believes in. Um, I know that Herb talked about his 6-man protections. I haven't seen that yet. It's one I've kind of got on in the off season to watch and study and learn about his pass pro stuff. But I know he talks about his 6-man protections quite a bit. I think he's a slide guy.
Mhm.
So I don't think you're going to see a lot of 5-on-5 or, whatever in pass protection game. I think it's going to be stick the ball in the stomach of the running back and either try to throw it deep or throw an RPO. And they're going to try to take that pressure off the offensive line and off their tackles specifically, because you see those are the 2 guys that have the lowest pass blocking PFF grades.
Yeah, and I think it's with you. And if they do get short circuited, it might be from like a quick loss or something like that. But they're going to put these dudes in the best position. And these guys, they've played a lot of football. Like the players, they know how to put them. They know their own limitations. They know how to put themselves in the best position. And they're going to be familiar with the offense where they can minimize the amount of harm that they can do on these plays. Like they're all very, like you said, Adam, they're very technical, professional, mature, veteran like line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm not really worried about the ones, but man, I think, and this is something that we all talked about. So this is like, we talked about 3 potential storylines. I think the 4th is, and it's the one that we all talked about, is depth, man. Cause I don't know what sort of confident, like like if you lose and we know as Florida State fans, by God, we know injuries happen at this position and things never go as planned at this position. Other than like maybe 1 or 2 dudes, I don't know what you do with the 2s, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't know who you count on. Like there's a couple that you count on, but at tackle, I'm looking at like the tackles. I don't know.
Yeah, you've got to get Lucas Simmons to give you something this year, right? I don't know. I mean, I know he was close with Atkins, or liked Atkins in the recruiting process, but it just didn't seem, that message just didn't seem to mix when he was here. So I'm hoping Herb Hand can get through to him. We'll see. Andre Otto is a guy I think that can play out of tackle. Ultimately, you'd like him to be a guard or maybe even a center, but I do think he could play tackle for you. I think Jalen Early's a guy that could play tackle for you. Worried about his weight yet again, like not over 300 going into spring ball. It's a guy that you got to get a little more ass on him. But he's probably not too far off of what like Gunnar Hansen is. I don't know what Gunner's listed at, but we never thought Gunner was a huge guy.
No,
at Vanderbilt. So, I mean, a tackle, those are probably the 3 names that you're maybe going to look at. I think a guard though, you're okay. You've got Jacob Rizzi. I thought Rizzi looked good last year, but like, who's the backup center? Is it Rizzi? Because he played some center and played some guard. Is it Otto, who also cross-trained at the 2? No, the depth there is still an issue. It's going to be for you.
And you got a guy, and then Kev, you got a guy that started for you a ton of the year in TJ Ferguson, who we haven't even 19 minutes in, we haven't even talked about. Probably because we don't want to bring up the fact that he was the worst statistical like offensive lineman in Power 4 football. It was just and I think there were some lingering injury stuff that we found out about, but it was bad, man. I'm genuinely worried if you get more than 2 injuries at this position at the same time, at this position group. I really am.
I think that's a fair concern. And
which it would be, to be fair, that would be for most teams in college football. So Florida State is not in a unique position, but I don't know, man.
The guy we haven't talked about is TJ Ferguson too. Like
that's what I was just saying. Yeah.
It's unfair to not discuss him because they were really high on him. They were really high on him coming out of high school. They were really high bringing him over from Bama. We weren't really high on him. We talked about it quite a bit leading up to last season, and it all played out. They've given the whole he was hurt, something with I think his elbow,
arm, something with the arm,
various injuries things. So that's a guy I'm curious if he can give you anything. Because if he can, there's another option at guard. But again, it's all options at guard. It's not freaking options at tackle, which might be a big problem for you. You're gonna have to do the whole slided guard out the tackle thing, and well, we've seen how that's worked out. You got Atite. I'm sorry, I'm
Manasseh.
Yeah,
Manasseh.
Tite. You've got Jonathan Daniels. You got Ty Hilton.
I don't think Jonathan Daniels is an offensive lineman for you in the long term. He just
right.
That never believed in that frame too much. So we'll see kind of where he's at. But Atite, I mean, this is his second year in the program. He's a guy you should start looking at. Like, you could get him a few reps. I know he was a raw prospect coming in, but he was a talented blue chip prospect. Like, it's a guy you should really start saying, okay, I can get, if I need 5-10 reps out of him in a game, I can go get them from him.
Mm-hmm. Kev, what do you think? I mean, what do you think about the potential, the potential just in general of this group? Like, what is the best case scenario? Like, what Florida State can have the blank best offensive line in the ACC, assuming the health holds? Because I feel pretty good. Like, it's just a solid group. The ones. What do you think the ultimate potential of this unit is this year?
Yeah, I think schematically, you're kind of limiting the floor and the ceiling. You're kind of narrowing the gap of performance. And in my opinion, you're simplifying things. And I think that might help some of these guys like Jalen Early or Otto, who just never quite felt like they were fluent in the offense.
They never looked comfortable, right?
Right. So you're hoping that simplifying things kind of makes life easier on these guys. But I also think that, there's a sense that you're running inside zone. You're announcing what you're doing. You've got to win. Like, you're kind of not going to get the easy yards from, having this diverse play set that where you can run counter and it just breaks,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're looking in the B+ to C range in terms of, you get a couple injuries. Well, now we're looking C minus, and but I don't think that they're going to let this offensive line be the detriment that it has been on occasion over the past 10 years at Florida State. So, but I also don't think that you're going to just be able to run at will against people without too much flair. I don't think you're going to be able to line up against Florida or Miami or Clemson and say, we're just going to run it down your throat. So I think you are limited in terms of ceiling.
Do you agree with that sentiment, Adam?
Yeah, I think I do. I mean, look, the tempo is going to help.
Yep.
They're going to give eye candy to the run game, which is going to help like crazy.
With like motions and stuff like that.
They're gonna feature jet motion and show all that stuff, and it's gonna provide eye candy that a defense is gonna have to consider coming off of tempo. Like, they're going to do things that help the run game out. But like Kev said, I mean, ultimately you kind of know they're going to line up and run inside zone. And like, I do think, like, they led the nation in yards before contact or something last year. I don't remember what the exact stat was. Like, and that was at UCF with a much worse group than what they're getting ready to roll out here this year. So, Micah Pettis is an elite run blocker. There's really no way around it. So I do think they're positioning themselves to be able to be more consistent against like the Clemsons of the world, where we've seen in the past, like, you couldn't line up and run the football against them. Even in their best year, undefeated year, like, they just struggle to line up and run the football against good fronts. I think I expect more success this year with this group and this coaching staff. But I do agree with Kev. Like, I don't think they're going to go out there and just put up like 250-yard performances against some of these better defensive lines that they're going to face. But how many of them are there on the schedule? Ultimately, you're looking at Florida, Miami, Clemson. I mean, that's about it as far as really good defensive line groups. So, and I guess Bama in the beginning, but you got you got to go against those other ones and really show yourself and not get beaten. That's where I think the difference is going to be for them.
Yeah, so I'm seeing number one in terms of yards before contact, or sorry, number two in the country, behind New Mexico. So number one in the Power Five, or however you want to define that, Power Four, or whatever we're talking about. And the numbers were a little bit lower for Florida, right? 1.6 yards before contact per rush against Florida. But what's interesting is some of their better games were against the two ranked teams at the end of their schedule. The 5.1 yards before contact against Iowa State, 4.6 against number 11 BYU. Like these were solid
impressive
teams.
stuff. Yeah,
These were teams that would have beat the tar out of Florida State last year, and they found some success on the run game, way better than any game Florida State was able to pull out of their hat.
So I'm feeling optimistic about this. Should I? Like, I don't want this to get clipped, but I'm feeling optimistic about this position group, man, which is so crazy to think after coming off 2-10 and the history of this position at Florida State, the recent history. I feel good. It's going to be a return to competency. It's going to be a return to effectiveness.
I think it's going to feel a lot different. I think for like, especially like this group, like last year was such a struggle.
It has to feel different.
Last year was such a freaking struggle. And even for me, I mean, back to Southern missing it in the undefeated year in 23, like,
yeah, you raised the alarm bells.
I was freaking beating the drum that there was a problem, and it played out. And I mean, I think he got rid of part of the problem. I think things were getting stagnant. I think there was a lack of willingness to take the run game to the next level with motion and that kind of stuff. I think there was a lack of a willingness to really dive into all the intricacies of the offensive line game and getting guys to understand everything that's going around in the big picture of blocking and what's happening on the field. I think Kirkpan's going to really embrace that. I think he's going to get through to these guys, and I think it's just going to. I know it's going to look better. I know that for a fact because he's proven it everywhere he's going. Like the records for him speak for themselves.
Absolutely. And I know that you guys are getting the best pre-spring, during spring, and post-spring coverage as long as you are subscribed to the X's and Noles YouTube channel with your notifications on Noles247.com. If you guys are not subscribed, all of the interesting nuggies on recruiting and what's going on here and where and all that stuff, all the info on the Florida State football program that you are worthy to know about, go to Noles247.com. Guys, we're coming back. We're not done with these videos because we got a whole new side of the ball to talk about. We're going to start doing some defensive videos, and we got a whole new coaching staff, a whole new scheme, and a whole slew of new dudes to talk about on that side of the ball. So stick with us. We love you. Also, keep chopping. Yes, right? Yeah, okay. Keep chopping. Yeah,
nice shirt. Fear the Spear. I like that.
Yeah, I'm a Florida State fan. Keep chopping.
Cool. Didn't know.